20s really interested in jazz music is incredible. And that's a very special part of South Africa, the music lovers here, young music lovers of jazz. The instrument for me, sometimes I can get emotional talking about it because it really was a lifeline for me. I picked it up when I was 13 years old, and I was dealing with a lot of things in my life that I had not words for. And the saxophone became like my best friend, and the vehicle by which I was able to express or get stuff out of me. So in a lot of ways, it kind of saved my life. Not to be over dramatic about that, but it really became my lifelong friend. And in that way, it's served me very, very well. And I think in that is the answer to your question, which is it's kind of a transparent instrument. Although I just loved hearing the harmonica too. So it depends on whose hands the instrument is in. Really has a lot to do with it, and what they have to say and where their heart is. But the saxophone in the right person's hand could be transformative. It could be incredibly emotional. It could be very um, filled with jubilation and everything in between. I mean, you have the full breadth with the saxophone. That's why I love to play it. I specifically love, my favorite is playing ballads, because then you can really stretch the emotion out.
That is very evident in your releases. Yes.
Hi, I'm Harriet Box from KMIBC.
Hi.
You obviously realize you've got a big fan base in South Africa, so we really like to know what is the next album and what can we expect?
Well, the album that got released last year was called Hello Tomorrow, and we're still sort of technically out promoting that album, Hello Tomorrow. And right now, I'm kind of plotting the next move. You're like my manager, just always asking me, so what's it going to be next? And I haven't quite figured it out yet. In fact, it's interesting too. I've been doing this for a little over 20 years. My first album came out in 1990, and I think I've had 12 albums total. So I don't really make albums very often, and especially for like a studio album, not a live album or a Christmas album. I've had a few of those. So usually it takes some time for me to get that inspiration and figure out what it is that where am I, the world does not need another album from me. The only reason to do it is if I have something I really have to say, because there's enough music out there of mine that people have in their iPods or in their iTunes. So if I was going to go do it, I wanted to make sure that I had something to say and that it mattered. So long answer to your question, I have no idea. If you have any ideas, let me know.
In fact, there is an idea before we speak to you.
You did a track with some great African legends. That was Eight Goals for Africa, and to me, it was like bringing the people like you and I, and bridging that gap between us and the older folk and the older music that we grew up with. There was Yvonne Chaka Chaka, there was Shima Sakila, and the rest of them. For you, what was that experience like? I can imagine it was awesome, but I'll just let you tell.
I mean, one of my first reactions when I was first asked to do that song was there's so many artists in Africa. There's so many great artists that are making massive waves, there's so many who are selling great numbers and all of that, and of all these, like, this massive landscape of musicians, they chose me, that was a massive honor for me. I think, perhaps they were thinking, a lot of the times when you go and travel outside of the country, you have, world music enthusiasts saying, like, we love South African music, but we feel that, the younger artists aren't indigenous enough. We're used to the Miriam Makewas, the, Jonas Gwangwas, the Hugh Masikelas, and now you guys have incorporated this hip hop into your music. Like, you come across as American when we see you guys, and unfortunately, I told them, like, hip hop is the new colonizer right now in the continent, and perhaps a lot more Africans relate to each other because of the genre itself, But what makes me stand up from the rest of them is that I always embrace that which makes me who I am. Like, my background, I grew up listening to everything from Queen, Chicago, Black Mambazo, Chuluka, and all those things, my brother Fela. It was just that mixture of influence, and also growing up in then the homeland Botswana as well. There were so many nations that lived there that, would have somebody like next door who's from Ghana, would have somebody next door from Sri Lanka, but we all kind of relate. We speak Setswana, we listen to each other's music, and we just influence each other. So I would say perhaps, me being asked to be a part of that panel of musicians was them acknowledging that, I'm not just a young musician who's hip and with what's happening currently. I'm also still trying to bring in what we grew up listening to and influence also the younger musicians, because the more we're going, guys are starting to all kind of look or sound like Lil Wayne, or it's just this whole culture that's brewing right now, and I always say it's always awesome to have guys who give us their experiences from where they're from. Like to have an artist like Samini from Ghana, like he'll kind of come through with his culture and what he's all about, or somebody from like Tay Grin from Zambia, or um, even Manifest from Ghana as well. There's Dibanj, there's so many artists who are still mainstream, but they always kind of remind us of where they stem from.
All right.
Yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, good.
Thank you, Jabba.
Sure.
KJ Kimo Maskela from Sunny FM. I just need to know from you, what's your man?
Boss of when
But anyway, yeah, on a serious note, question is like, how do you feel about the fact that Java can be seen maybe at a club, gigging anywhere else, and there are those musicians who could have maybe, because they call it the Cape Town International Jazz Festival,
Yes,
how do you feel about the fact that you are here and maybe there's a jazz musician somewhere starving and
yes,
who could have been in the lineup,
yes.
but tell me about that one.
Like I say, my brother, half of the time we never know why we're asked to come and perform at these gigs. Is because of I don't know. That's a question that actually somebody asked me about on Thursday. Like somebody asked me that question on Thursday, and I was trying to think. Okay, maybe that's perhaps the question you need to ask the organizers of the whole show. Did they bring us here to entertain their kids while they're listening to orthodox, jazz musicians, or do they actually see something in us that perhaps we could influence? Our kind of generation, into like, getting onto the vibe of where everyone is at. Quite frankly, you have musicians who start off perhaps contemporary. Like I remember growing up to listening to George Benson, "Turn Your Life Around." And I'm thinking, okay, fine, this is some stuff that I could actually jam to. But then later on, you hear him singing that very like serious, jazz kind of music. So perhaps musicians do come from somewhere, and then they later, transcend to become like, more serious, musicians or whatever. And that's perhaps what they see in me. But as to answer your question, yes, I'm sure there are like a lot of jazz musicians out there who feel that they need to be like in a platform where they could be heard or whatever. But we never know, my brother, why perhaps we are chosen and the next person is not. That's the laws of life, I think, my brother. Some people get it and some don't. Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, right on the back there. Oh, the lady first. Sorry, she put up her hand first. We'll be with you in just a moment. And it is a lady. What can I say?
Hi, my name is Schullzz from Plastica from Lagos, Nigeria. I remember seeing you at the Everybody Loves Ice Prince concert.
Yes, yes, the
And
launch.
you brought the energy on stage. Where does that energy come from?
I assume perhaps it's just below my belly button. There's this section, but I don't know. I always say like, I'm still one of those musicians who get very nervous before they get on stage, and I use those nerves to channel, that drive or that energy when I get on stage. Especially at that show. It's my first time now performing for like, a very big Nigerian crowd, where it's not even a music awards kind of scenario. It's a one-on-one thing. People I came for Ice Prince. I'm not even on Ice Prince's album, but they're expecting to see something from me. And then when you walk out there, you have to just give them you. Like you can never go wrong when you just give yourself on stage. And that's exactly what I did. And to even get that kind of response saying that the energy was there, like that means I did my job. And I appreciate that. I think in so many cases, we kind of fall short when we're trying to impress. Right now, we're at the Jazz Festival. My first time here, I was super nervous. I was thinking, should we maybe like prepare like a 6/7, or should we try like maybe like a this kind of piece? But like once you get out there and then you just do you, people take it for what they take it, and yeah, some of those who don't appreciate it won't, but just give yourself 100%.
One final question.
All right.
Okay, we'll have two. We'll have two.